Hey everybody, so I wanted to do a demo today. I want to try to film a little bit more for YouTube and for Instagram. So I'm going to try to do a demo here on my pointer finger and finish off this set. I actually had a nail on it already, but I did the tip a little too narrow. So I'm going to go ahead and redo it here for you guys and try to film again. Just bear in mind, if you notice any wobbling, the tripod that I use for my phone is like a flexi arm. So it does wobble a little bit. In the future, I may switch it out for something that's a little more sturdy, but for now, this is what we got. So just, bear with me for a little bit. So I've already removed the previous nail that I had on this finger. All I do is I file down all of the bulk and I pretty much bring it down to a very thin layer of acrylic or gel or whatever I have on my nail at that time. So now that it is pretty much filed down to a super thin layer, I'm going to dehydrate the nail. So I'm going to take a tiny bit of Swipe. This is by Young Nails. If you don't know the name of it, you can use rubbing alcohol as well. They both work, but I just, I have Swipe right now. I actually used rubbing alcohol for a very long time. Oops, let me not knock over my monomer. I do use a manicure brush for that. I find that this is easier, and some lint-free wipes are not 100% lint-free, so I find that this is actually more of a lint-free option. So I prefer to use this to cleanse my nails unless I am trying to cleanse the dispersion layer or sticky layer off of gel, because that you really need like a wipe for, but this works really well to just get dust off. The only thing with Swipe, if you notice, it does dry out the skin around your nails, so that's just the only issue. I notice I don't really get that as much with the rubbing alcohol. So now, actually, let me show you what I'm using. This is the Young Nails Protein Bond. This is one that I use quite a lot, but use whatever primer works well for you. And with this, I'm just going to do one coat. Main reasons for that, for me at least, are because I change my nails out very often and I'm still learning how to prep the nail and really get it ready. So for me, since I'm changing them out and since I'm not really wearing them super long, I don't necessarily need it to like adhere really well, but I do know that they recommend using 2 coats of the Protein Bond. So use whatever you have and apply that. So now I have this nail and I'm going to grab a form and start to actually build out my nail. So I grabbed one of my forms. This is just like a cheapo one from Amazon. You can get these at like Sally's Beauty Supply, I believe, as well. They're not the best, but I did use these because I am trying to use them up. I use these for my other hands, and I do find that sometimes the form, like curvature and shape, does make a difference. So I want to use the same form that I use on my other fingers for this finger. One thing that you'll probably notice with this is that the stamping of the grid lines is slightly off center. I don't really pay attention to that, so it doesn't really matter to me. But if you are a beginner and you're using those, just be forewarned, you may want to get better forms. I do like the Young Nails ones. I have bought a couple from different places that are just not the best. Young Nails seems to be pretty consistent in their quality of their forms. Valentino Beauty Pure has some good ones as well. I am just cutting a tiny little opening here at the base because I have an extended hyponychium underneath my pointer fingers, which just means that the skin kind of grows out a little bit more. So to prevent there from being pressure and from it hurting, I cut just a tiny little V. You can use like cuticle nippers or whatever to build that or cut that out as well. So I pretty much will just pinch it right in the middle of that V and attach it. Just make sure that it is flat. I don't want it to be pointed like super high or be pointed really low, so you kind of want to make sure that it is flat like that, so it's flush. Now, one thing that you may notice on my hand, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you, is I get a little gap here on the side. The curvature of my pointer finger just is really hard for me to form sometimes, so it's not as flush as it could be. And the other thing is, if I point it this way, Hopefully you can see my finger kind of takes a mean curve, and my nail bed itself is kind of tilted down. So for me, when I form it, it doesn't necessarily look like it's straight. So you can see it kind of looks wonky, but this is going to give me the straightest look when the nail is completely done. So this is what I have going on right now, and we can go ahead and start building our nail. So for me, when I build out, especially because I change out my color a lot, I do like to build out in a nude, and I actually didn't grab mine, so let me just grab that. I prefer Cover Pink if I'm gonna do an acrylic to build out my nude. The reason I like to start my extension with this is because it doesn't stain the tip of your nail. Sometimes if you're using colored acrylic or glitter acrylic, it can stain your nail, and it's really hard to remove, especially if you're not soaking off. So I like to start my extension with a nude or a clear, depending on what type of nail I'm doing. Nude is just easier for me because I am a beginner and you can see it, so it's not as like translucent and hard to manage, but use whatever you prefer. So I'm going to pick up a pearl. I prefer a really small pearl for this extension. I may do slightly bigger than that. So I'm going to take a little bit. This might actually be too small. It's hard for me with this one because I do need to build this side up a little bit thicker so that it actually matches up with my free edge, because the way that my nail is, it's a lot wider of a gap between the form and my free edge. So I always have a hard time eyeballing the amount of product that is needed for this nail, but we will get there. So I'm gonna take that, kind of pull it back. Oops, sorry, I laid it down and I pulled back. That's the only time I need my hand that way, really. So then I'm kind of going to attach it and start kind of pushing that product to my side walls. You don't want it to really go further than your side wall. So whereas you can see right here, there's kind of a line, you don't want it to go past that, because then you're going to end up with a very wide nail. Just kind of build out the general shape that you want. Sorry if it's a little difficult to see. This is going to take me a little bit to kind of figure out the best way to do this, you know, with filming and whatnot. And I am a beginner and I'm self-taught, so if what I'm doing is not correct, you don't have to do it that way. You can do it however you prefer, but this is just what works for me and what I found has really helped me get the process to be a little bit smoother on my own nails especially. So now you can see I'm not too worried about this. If I wanted to, since I am doing an almond nail, I could come in and take just a tiny pearl. Oop, I keep going off to the side and just kind of fill in this little gap. But I'm not too worried about that, honestly. That would get covered by the white that I'm gonna do. So now you can see it is built out pretty much flush with my natural nail, so I can go ahead and start building on top of that. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take Speed White. I did use a different white the other time I used this, and I didn't really like the way that picked up. So I'm gonna see if I like Speed White better. I can't remember how this one picks up, but we will see. Sometimes whites are a little chunky, if that's a good way to describe it. So they don't really like flow the way a traditional acrylic would. Oop, oh goodness, look, see, I'm getting so nervous. I am not able to pick these up properly. So I'm just gonna take that out. I don't like leaving those in there. Tap that down. I also don't normally use this brush. I just wanted to go ahead and use it this time. So again, same thing. I'm going to just place this down here. Oh, I actually like the way this way applies better. This one applies more like a traditional acrylic. I can show you later on what I meant by the chunkiness. if you're curious. I'm just going to go ahead and lay this over top of that extension. What I am gonna do is go ahead and pick up a very, very tiny pearl, and I'm gonna place that right here and then kind of blend it up because I want to mask that line between my free edge and the white a little bit more. You can still kind of see it right there, so I'll do that again. I personally work really, really wet, especially lately now that I've kind of started to get a little bit better at applying my acrylic thinner, and really trying to get the look and the thickness that I want right off the bat instead of building it super thick and then trying to file it down. I prefer to apply my product a little bit more wet because one is a lot easier to blend it into other product, but also it prevents me from making it too thick and then having to spend like 5 hours filing one nail. So that's just my preference. The better you get, the better you'll get with your liquid to powder ratio, and you can work a little bit drier and really build up the product in, less beads. For me, I just need to work a lot wetter, so I tend to use a lot more beads, but really it's all preference. I do find that I end up actually cutting my time even though I'm using more beads because I'm building the product a lot thinner. So for me, the part that takes the longest is the filing. So by building my product thinner, I'm able to actually cut down on my filing time, which in all helped me cut down on my time overall. So I am going to go ahead and do an ombre now that I have that placed. But what I can show you really quick, before I do that and while that's kind of drying before I do the ombre, I'm going to go ahead and take this. So this is Whitest White Slick Pour. This isn't the only white that I've seen do this. The Mia Secret white also does this, and a couple others that I've tried. So I don't know what it really is. And I'm gonna just take a small pearl, so if you see this, if I place this down, I don't know if you're going to be able to notice, but when I go to kind of blend it, it's a lot more like chunky. So you see how that kind of, it doesn't really flow. So when you apply it to the nail, it kind of clumps up and it's like soft. It doesn't dry super fast, but it just is more like thick or moussey versus being that like liquid flow that a traditional acrylic looks like. So I would actually say if you're going to be doing something like this and you want an opaque white, this Speed White from Young Nails actually works a lot better than something like their Whitest White Slick Pour or the Mia Secret white cover powder. So just so you know, there is a difference, and sometimes you'll just have to play around and see what works best. So now I'm going to go ahead and take Cover Blush. Oop, I am hitting my table, sorry guys. And I'm going to go ahead and do my ombre. This is a super pretty kind of iridescent, like an iridescent pink. When you apply it to the nail, it doesn't have as much coverage as like their Cover Pink does, but it is still super pretty. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a pearl. And again, I work smaller and a lot more wet. So I will use probably, like where somebody would use 1 or 2 pearls for this, I'll probably use like 3, sometimes maybe 4, depending on, where my ombre ends and what I'm trying to do. So you apply it to your cuticle, and you want to go ahead and put your brush behind it to just kind of push that product as close as you can get. And just brush it forward. And with a product like Cover Blush versus like a very opaque color, it actually works in your favor because it does have some coverage, so it'll conceal some of the imperfections, but it doesn't have too much to where if you're a little off from your cuticle or a little wonky, that it's going to be super noticeable. So now that you see I have that, I could use a little bit of product here, I think, just to give me some room for filing. So I'm going to take another pearl, just a small one, and I'm going to add it right here. If I'm building up, I do tend to prefer to, once I have my cuticle bead down, that's kind of all around here, I don't really like to build too much right at the cuticle. If I do build any more, I try to keep it a little bit further back because you don't want it to get too thick and then again give yourself a lot to file. So now that I have that, you can kind of see how that is looking. I will have to just go ahead and apply some product here in the center and just to, you know, blend it into the tip and give me a little bit smoother of an apex. So I'm going to let that dry down a little bit while I pull out my Core Clear. This one is the one that I prefer from the Young Nails line specifically. I do like other clear acrylics, but this is the one that I prefer from their line because it gives you a little more time to work than their Speed Clear, which Speed Clear is nice. I like it and it works well, but it's something where if you are a beginner, like I said, and you need more time for filing, your better bet is to just go ahead and use a slower setting powder or monomer to give you that time to really work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go for a slightly bigger bead than I have been working with. This is a oval 9, so it's not going to give you super massive beads. You can if you use a lot of liquid, but that is one of the reasons that I used this brush, is that I can get smaller beads with it a lot easier. And when you're doing something like this where you're building up layers and color and you're not just building one whole nail, you know, a full coverage all in one color, and you don't have to really worry about tiny details or building up layers of color, then you know, a smaller brush is a little bit better for that sometimes. You can get it with a larger brush, you just have to bleed out more of the liquid, but you know, it's all preference. I use a lot of different size brushes depending on what I'm going for, what kind of look I'm going for, what I'm doing, the type of product that I'm using, etc. So I'm just adding a little bit of clear. Gonna look at it sideways. Hopefully you guys will see. I pretty much have a smooth transition line. This is also why I like to work very wet, because it does give you that smoother transition. I do see there's like a tiny spot right here on this side that I could add a little product. I don't know if you guys can see it. So I'm just gonna go ahead, pick up a tiny bead, go right there, and kind of blend it in. And that should be it. I'm gonna go ahead, let this set up, and I will file it all out, and then I will show you guys the design that I'm putting on top. Alrighty, I went ahead off camera and I filed and shaped the nail. I didn't really need to do too much filing because I use very wet, very thin pearls, but I do a lot of my filing at the free edge to kind of create the shape. The cuticle and everything, you just need to touch it up a little bit. I use a sanding band mostly for that, just to really get it flush with the cuticle area. One thing I wanted to point out before I start the rest of the design, I did file a tiny bit out right here, if you can see that. Sorry that the camera is moving. But I did file a tiny bit out right here because I have to build up so much product right here on the edges, because my free edge doesn't sit flush with the form, and because when you are trying to build up product, you use it a lot drier, so that you can get that thickness and that clay-like consistency to really build body, instead of when you use it wet and you get that really thin application. Sometimes I do end up a little bit thicker here. Really what it is that it wasn't pressed in enough. It was kind of pressed too flat, so it stuck out a little bit. So when I applied the white over it, it went too far past my sidewall, and when I filed, it kind of filed that white off. You can just build the entire free edge in your colored acrylic. Since this is white, it wouldn't have mattered too much. I just really like to be in the habit of putting a nude or clear underneath when I'm doing a colored acrylic, because with darker colors, glitter colors, things like that, it can stain your nails, so that's my preference. But I just wanted to point it out and let you know that you can avoid that by doing certain things like building the free edge completely with your colored acrylic. I just didn't do that. You can avoid it with using the nude free edge method. You just have to be a little bit more narrow in your application, so that when you apply the color over top and it kind of wraps around that nude, you don't file it out when you go to finish off the nail. I already went ahead and I swiped it, so this is what we're looking at right now. I'm going to go ahead and take a non-wipe top coat and apply this first, because I'm going to do the sweater effect on this to create my design. So when you do the sweater effect, if you're going to do like a clear top coat, sorry, not a clear, a shiny top coat, you want to go ahead and do that first, so that you can go ahead and apply this, because you don't want to necessarily top coat over this. I've seen some people do, I don't personally, and it stays just fine, but it's your preference. I prefer to just go ahead in with my top coat first, and then go ahead with my like sugared sweater design. So like I said, this is the Kiara Sky one. They have a couple. This is just a really thin formula. I noticed that pretty much all the Kiara Sky ones are a thinner formula. So I like them when I'm gonna be doing a couple layers of product, because it gives me a little more room without building the nail too thick. I'm just gonna go ahead, make sure that that is coated, and because it's thin, it can get kind of runny, so I'm gonna clean that up, make sure it's not on my skin anywhere else. I get that cleaned up, and then I am going to go ahead into my lamp. This is the Diamond Lamp by iGel. I got this when I bought one of their like full line collections, but you can use any UV or LED lamp to cure it. So I'm going to cure this top coat fully. So it's gonna go for 60 seconds. Alrighty, so now that I went ahead and cured that, I took a little bit of my iGel Beauty Line Art Gel in the shade number 1, White on White. So this is a gel paint in a bottle. It has like a little thin brush. For this type of design, I'm not going to use the brush, but you can. A bunch of companies have those. Kiara Sky has some. Amazon has some good ones, so there's a bunch of places you can get them. But I'm gonna go ahead and use this one, and I'm gonna take a dotting tool. This I think came from like a little Amazon kit, but any one works fine. I put it on a palette so I can pick it up a little bit easier, and I'm gonna just decide my placement. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to decide where I want the middle of my snowflake to be. So I think I'm gonna put it right about here. And I'm just going to do a little dot. Then I'm going to, in like a X or like a cross, I'm gonna do 2 dots going in like a little compass shape. So 1, 2, add a tiny bit more. 1, 2, and add a little bit more to make them a little bigger. 1, 2. And you can do more than one of these. You can do just the one. It's really going to be your preference on design. Now I'm going to kind of fill it out and do the diagonal, so right in the middle of the ones that I have already. These I make slightly smaller. I think it gives a better look that way. And I don't space them out as much as I did the other. Oop, I think that's done. So now that I have that, I'm gonna put my little daughter to the side, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take a thin brush. This is from Michaels. It's one of the Princeton brushes. You can get these real cheap. I kind of like them because they have a lot of different sizes. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'll take a tiny bit of that gel paint onto it. And then starting from the middle line, I'm gonna go ahead and just draw out. Or sorry, from the middle dot. Now that I have this, I'm gonna go ahead and take some clear acrylic. This is the Speed Clear from Young Nails, but anyone will work. I'm using this one because I have it in a large jar, so it's gonna be easier for me to do what I have to do. I'm gonna take a little cuticle pusher that kind of caves in so I can do like a little scoop. And before I cure this, I'm gonna go ahead and just pour the acrylic over it. I kind of do it a few times so that I can get it in all the little nooks and crannies of that gel art. I will kind of like twist my finger so that I can make sure I'm hitting all of those areas, and then tap off. And now that we have that, before you brush it off, because it's gonna move, it's not cured yet, you wanna go ahead in your light and you want to cure it. I cure it on high power if I'm using a white gel paint, because white reflects the light a little bit more than other colors, so it doesn't cure as easily as some other colors. So go ahead and cure that for 60 seconds to 2 minutes, and then once we're done with that, I will show you the final look. Now that you final cured your design, I went ahead and I dusted off the excess acrylic with a fluffy brush, and I went ahead and I applied some cuticle oil. This is from Sally Beauty Supply. It's a thinner oil, but it smells really nice and I do love it. So and it's inexpensive, so I went ahead and applied that. I do apply a lot. I have really dry cuticles because I wash my hands constantly, so apply a little bit of that and you are pretty much all set with your design. I will take some up close shots of the nail set so that you guys can see it, but I think that this is a really fun thing to do. No matter if you're doing something like this, like a snowflake design, or doing something else, it's a really cool thing to do, that like sugared effect. And you can do it with acrylic, clear acrylic, colored acrylic. You can do it with glitters. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this and create different effects. So I do really like it. I, for one, like the texture. The texture doesn't really bother me too much, and I am somebody who is like, that's a big thing for me. I was really nervous that it would irritate me, but honestly, you don't notice it too much, especially if you're using like acrylic versus glitter, and it ends up looking very pretty in the long run. So really love how this set came out. I think it's just a classic winner design, and again, you can do more of the snowflakes if you wanted to do this and kind of really play it up. I just really wanted that cover blush to show, and since these aren't super long nails, I only did the one, but play it with it, see what works for you, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. Thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it and would like to see more. Bear with me, this is my first real like trying how to do this video when actually knowing semi what I'm doing. My previous ones that I've tried was really at the beginning stages of me playing around with acrylic, especially let alone just any nail products. So this is really at the stage where I semi know what I'm doing, at least as far as to get to the effects that I like. So I think that overall my designs and things are a little bit better now, just because I can actually focus more on my designs instead of having to focus a lot more on my application. So if you like like this and you would like to see more from me, definitely thumbs this up and leave me a comment down below letting me know what you would like to see. Like I said, bear with me in the beginning with the filming aspect, because it's definitely a lot harder to film this than it is to film like makeup tutorials or things like that. So you know, I'll get there and we'll practice and we'll kind of go on this learning journey together. But I hope that it's gonna be fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna let you guys go. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye everybody.